Hi, I'm Tiffany Brown.
I'm Nicole Holloway. This is to frame you all about our conversation today. Is we're gonna introduce ourselves, talk about our core values. Then we're gonna probably do a little storytelling about our backgrounds. Then we're gonna move into some financial literacy. We're gonna talk about how to build a retirement nest egg. In a very values-aligned way. After that, it's going to incorporate a more of the building of awareness about the way that you're investing and how to do that. And we'll wrap up with more dialogue about opportunities, contradictions around this thing that we like to do, socially conscious investing.
In 2018, I co-founded Chordata Capital, Investment with a Backbone, with my beautiful business partner, Kate Poole. You can see there. So we identify as being an anti-capitalist investment firm. We have about 35 clients, all accredited investors, which means that people have more than $1 million of capital outside of their home as an investment. We only invest outside the stock market and in investments that center racial and economic justice. We call it direct placement or alternative investments. And then our core values are centering economic self-determination, and also that we don't believe that money should just make money off of itself. And so we prioritize getting profits back to workers. So then, how did I get here? I don't have a background in finance. I was always in the nonprofit sector. I grew up working middle class. I'm half black, half white. I was raised by my single white mama. And I got politicized in college and was like really interested in racial justice. And anyway, I don't want to get too long into the story and have it mostly focused on kind of how I got into the direction of finance and investing. But basically, after college, I started working at this organization called Yes. And Yes was actually how I met Jessica, and then another woman, Anasa, that's here at this conference too. Oh, Anasa, back there, I just said your name. Hello. So anyway, Yes did these leadership development retreats, both nationally and internationally. And then another program that we had was called Leveraging Privilege for Social Change. And that was largely because the founder of Yes came from the Baskin-Robbins ice cream family fortune and was interested in how to help locate people who had exceptional wealth or fame in relationship to a social justice movement. And for me, because of my working middle class background, I had no idea that there was this whole population of young people with wealth that wanted to do good stuff with it. And as I developed these relationships, I should also mention that LPSC is what we called it. It was a collaboration with Resource Generation, which will come into the story later. Maybe many of you, or some of you might know Resource Generation. Anyway, through doing my work with this program, I was really clear that in my identity as a black woman that the American dream was not working for me. But what was sort of shocking was that here I was in this community of each year there were 30 new young people with wealth who were really struggling with guilt and shame and isolation. And I was like, whoa, so if they have money, and we're sort of taught that if you have money, then you're all good, but these people are not all good, that actually this American dream isn't working for any of us. And it kind of shook me. And so then kind of that was a pivot for me of how then do I start to orient towards what is a the roadmap for radical interdependence. So anyway, 2007, 2008, the economic collapse happened. Yes sort of folds. The same old fault lines. It was what I've learned is when times are good, everybody's like, yeah, but then when times are hard, it's like it fractures around race and class, and that a lot of times like people with wealth, white folks, like they grab their bags of money and they run for the hills. So anyway, it like crumbled, and I was like, man, like I'm done with nonprofits. Like that was a real brutal truth. I ended up being a DJ. I like did like urban homesteading events. I was like, screw all this. Then Resource Generation was looking for a retreat director. And because I had these like fond memories of Resource Generation, I was like, okay, like I will consider working for RG. And also they had a real anti-capitalist stance. Like they were about the equitable redistribution of land, wealth, and power. And I was like, I can get behind that. I want to work for a place that has a backbone. And so I was the retreat director, and as a part of my retreat directorship, I had to do sponsorship. Well, sponsorship was interesting. A lot of what do you call it? Like foundations, social justice foundations, a lot of wealth management firms, or like affinity groups for wealthy people. Those were our like target market for sponsorship. So with this wealth management firm thing though, I was like, tell me more, like how did these people get an invitation to the table? Well, they were like chomping at the bit to get in front of these young people with wealth because everyone was talking about this big wealth transfer that was about to happen. And they also were like starting to get pretty well versed in like what's the speak of this like anti-capitalist like organization of young people. And so I was like, okay, I'm interested. Like what is this? And I developed some nice relationships, and within RG, like I kind of went as far as I could go, and then went through ended a engagement and was like ready for what's next. And this woman happened to ask me like, why don't you come and work for me in Boston at this wealth management firm, which shall not be named, and I'll teach you everything I know. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm in, because I thought that it would be like the nonprofit of finance or something, but in a better way, because I just said I don't like nonprofits. But anyway, anyhow, it was a really intense shift for me. I was the only Black woman in the office. I was the only woman of color. I was one of 2 people of color in an office of 25. And all of this business of socially responsible investing, I wasn't witnessing it. Like when I sat at the table talking about investments, there didn't seem to be a clear through line of like what the investment in the corporation, like what the actual impact was. And I also didn't have a lot of power. So, and it's like absolutely like a new speak, like it's a totally different language in finance. And so it was really hard to agitate also. Yeah. And because I had these relationships with people at Resource Generation, they'd be like, Tiffany, come back and like present and do workshops on like impact investing. And I just felt like a hypocrite. Like I just felt like I can't believe that I have like one foot in this one world of like my activist like homies that are talking about like anti-capitalist vision, and then this other foot, literal belly of the beast, like, and it was a really, really hard time. So the silver lining, I'm like in the office, and in walks Erin Tanaka and Libby, and they were there to present about Ujima. And I was invited to like have a seat at the table with a few other colleagues, and I was just like so elated. Like for the very first time, I heard an investment being characterized as like actually taking into account how investment, like it really prioritizes a return to the wealthy. And this one kind of turned investment on its head and was like, how do we center racial and economic justice and build wealth for those who've been economically excluded? And so I was like, okay, I love this. And also, I'm like deeply isolated. I need to find a community of people that I can like learn the speak so that I can like start to figure out how there could be more options like this. And also I felt this responsibility because like I had made this bizarre choice to like go into finance, and like had all these friends that were like, we have really radical values and we have like investment advisors who don't listen to us. So anyway, I learned about this fellowship, which then I reconnected with Jessica again. And it was called the RSF Integrated Capital Fellowship. And my business partner, Kate Poole, she also was doing this fellowship. And she had previously been one of the founding members of Regenerative Finance, which also was like kind of born out of the RG and movement generation community, where they were interrogating, like, if we say that we have more than enough money, then why don't we bring some of those radical values into how we look at investing and start thinking about like 0% returns or negative returns. So yeah. Do this fellowship and presenting workshops still with like RG, and Erin, Kate, and myself, we did this workshop called Centering Love and Finance. And it felt like it was like, I mean, we had this like kind of funny thing we called the science fair, and I was wearing like a top hat and I was pretending I was someone's investment advisor, like Phil. And we were like, okay, like talk to me like I'm Phil. Tell Phil like why you want to get out of like doing traditional like investments in corporations or whatever. And so we realized that in doing these workshops, what we were trying to do is like organize young people with wealth so that they could then like go and organize their investment advisor, who would then maybe get them invested in Ujima. But what they would probably do is be like, ooh, but it's really risky. Why don't you invest like $10,000 or something like that? So we were like, you know what? We have all these relationships, and we should just build our own firm. So we did. In 2018, we built Chordata Capital, investment with a backbone, and let's see, the next slide is our backbone. There we go. So we center a commitment to racial and economic justice. We're all about accountability and shared risk. A lot of this came out of what it was for me to partner with my business partner, Kate, who is a white inheritor. So what did it look like to actually build a firm that was like taking into account that I was taking a really big risk, like leaving a job that had a salary, that had like health benefits and all of this. So we took that into account, and then that's also how we think about the work we do, larger than just our own identities. And then bringing our whole selves, which actually is kind of funny, because when we did this, people were like, oh, wow, like bring your whole selves. But actually it feels like a radical act to be like, I'm not gonna do the song and dance of finance. I wanna show up like in the wholeness of who I am, like where I'm from, how I wanna be. And yeah, so that's our backbone. And I guess I'll say, and this is like a little bit of just connecting it to the title of this workshop, it feels good to have a little bit of attitude in finance. To be like, investment with a backbone, we saw that like really business as usual is spineless. Like it's not centering people, it's not centering workers, it's not centering the planet. So yeah, I feel like that's where like bringing our whole selves, like everything we stand for, feels really important. So we were like, let's build our own firm, but we also don't want to do it from scratch. And so we didn't want to build our own registered investment advisory firm. What we wanted to do was partner with somebody who could like do all of that back end stuff for us. And we found Natural Investments, which had been on our radar for some time. I had learned about them, I think in 2014 or something. And Kate actually had been working with one of their investment advisors as well, to manage her own wealth. So they're a lot of sweet people, but there was only one woman of color that her name is Malika. She's an absolute angel. Like, she also is like one of the owners. Anyway, I was interested in Natural Investments, kind of interviewed with them. They were really excited to take on me and Kate. And the way that Natural Investments works is that they're the ones that are registered with the SEC. So we kind of like hang our credentials. We took a Series 65. We hang our credentials on Natural Investments. And each of us were all independent contractors. So I joined in 2018, and then
I joined in 2020.
Yeah, and we each have like our own shops. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I'm gonna pass it to Nicole.
So my shop, my firm is called Strategy Squad. The reason why I am here today on this stage, we talked this morning in Jessica and Conda's talk this morning, one of the things that was brought up was about like collectivism. And I'm an example of, and Tiffany, and we are examples of Black women who have lifted me up. My firm, I've been able to grow my firm out of the lifting up and the support of other Black women, mentors like Ronnie with Runway and Uptima. And when I founded my firm, Strategy Squad, in 2016, after coming through a very similar traumatic experience in a traditional wealth management firm at Merrill Lynch in San Francisco. And it's so fun, as Tiffany and I talk, we have just the trauma of it all in different ways. But I quickly knew when I was there that it was not the environment that I could that I could be rooted, that I wanted to build a career with. And I saw all the problems of, call it up to white patriarchy, but, this kind of cutthroatness, not centering people of color or their voices and things like that. So luckily it provided a foundation for me to be registered, which, as a financial advisor, it's super important. At the time, I was also finishing up a graduate degree in finance, and also it was very important to me to become a certified financial planner. Financial planners and certified financial planners are kind of, it's like the designation in our industry when we're talking about kind of holistic planning, but we're going to talk more about that in the contradictions part. So I am a certified financial planner. I built my practice. I have similar amount of households under management. I work with both high net worth individuals, and the very interesting part of my practice that I'm building more is I have nonprofit clients as well. So I work, very conscious investors, and was very attracted to this side of investing. I was looking desperately for it, and out of a acquaintance, a good friend, actually a mutual friend of ours in the Bay Area, I met Tiffany, who then decided she wasn't going to push me off, or she could have very easily said, well, I'm doing the same thing that you're doing, so don't, let's not help each other. She decided to help me make an introduction to natural investments, and particularly Malaika Mafalala at the firm, and they kind of took me under their wing, and it was pretty much divine timing. I founded my practice in 2016, but until 2020, I was struggling. I was really struggling. Before that time, before I joined Natural Investments, I did luck out, and after being a part of an accelerator program in the Bay Area, where I was able to be introduced to the Runway team and was able to raise my first capital. And those two things, having my first business loan where I pitched in front of a room of 4 Black women, including Nina, including Conda, Ronnie, and I can't remember who else was there. But that was huge for me. It was a very nerve-wracking experience. But since then, I've been able to build a team. I have hired 2 other women of color. I provide good jobs, and I provide a sustainable business, growing business that I'm able to feed my family as a breadwinner, and show my children that I can be present and be a leader, and be able to steward wealth and capital in the world. And that was the core-ness to why that I wanted to do this work, is I really wanted to be in a more powerful position to be able to move money in a much faster way to our community. Yeah.
Love it.
So we're gonna go through some basics on financial literacy, and I cannot make assumptions about how much we know, but sometimes we know, and sometimes we need reminders, and sometimes we don't know. So most of us, including myself, I took risk, just like we took risk to start our own practices. It took capital. We left jobs with salaries and matching retirement contributions perhaps and things like that. So where I'm at in my stage, I chose to invest in myself and my practice, but it was a huge investment. And like many of you, I am on my journey to wanting to be more financially independent, and also be mindful of the fact that like I do want to retire one day with like, and be, comfortable, be able to support myself and things like that. So, but what I have found, and with most, especially women of color entrepreneurs, but people, in general, is like building wealth, especially for retirement, is a very hard thing. It's a very hard thing to do. So how do we do that? There's some core tenets here, and I'm going to go over some examples of compound interest in a second. But we can't forget about, compounding. When you are saving, and you get some interest or some return, that, just math, just pure math, it compounds and it will help you grow assets in a faster way. Paying yourself first is extremely important and also hard to do when you have responsibilities. But trying to do that and automate it is extremely important. Automating it through, if you are at a job where they have a 401k or a 403b, like that's an easy win. If you're self-employed, you have to be a little bit more active. If you get paid, the first thing that you do when you get paid as an independent contractor is you have to move that money into an account that is separate from your day-to-day spending account, checking account, what have you, because you have to actually be active in setting it aside. I think like the first thing that one of the first things when we're focused on retirement is like really trying to maximize our retirement, like try to max out your 401k contribution, your 403b, max out your IRA. 6,500 is where it's at in terms of for people under 50. I think 7,500 now, this year for 2023. Try to like make it, if you're not doing that now, like challenge yourself to max out that contribution and be like staunch, like I have to do this every year. And we'll talk about like, you can't just fund it, you gotta like actually like invest it after that. But like that's important. And also know that when you're saving for retirement, like just maxing out your retirement accounts and making that contribution is probably not going to do it. That's not it. So having something that you do in addition, whether it's in a brokerage account, we'll talk about different accounts in a second, but you have to once you can do that and you can do more, like also putting some extra money aside, making some extra investments is going to be helpful. Researching investment opportunities, we can talk a little bit more about that. But overall, when you're building up a portfolio, diversification is really key, and we can talk more about that as well. Like, what does it mean to be diversified when we're investing and we're saving? So these are different types of retirement accounts. And one of the things that Tiffany was like reminding me as we were preparing for this talk is like often we're not sure like what types of investments are supposed to be, like what is like average rates of return for like certain types of investments and like certain types of accounts. On the non-retirement savings account side, we have real opportunities now where interest rates 2 years ago were like, it was pitiful, Now where interest rates are at now, putting money in a high yield savings account, particularly if like you don't want to be invested in the stock market, well, putting money in a high yield savings account or money market account, particularly at a banking institution that you feel aligned with, credit unions, black-owned banks, they're great vehicles because they come with insurance, FDIC insurance, up to $250,000 per per account holder. So those are great. Where savings rates are at now are around 4 to 5% at a lot of these savings accounts. That's decent. That's a decent way to start building, and compounding interest. So there's some resources out there. I guess, is it Find a Better Bank? BetterBankingOptions.com. That's one website that another advising team at our firm has kind of helped steward. That's a great resource where you can go and find a more values-aligned bank if that's something that you need help with. Also, just Google, Black-owned banks. There's lots around, and I think it is very important for us to have money in a Black-owned bank. So if you haven't done that yet, please do that. Put some money there. That money is being used to help Black folks, low-income folks be able to access credit, mortgage loans, other things like that. The bank uses the deposits to help the community to provide capital in various ways. So those kind of accounts earn interest, okay? Also a great place for your emergency savings, okay? But it could, interest rates do change and are in flux. So where interest rates are at now, they may go up a little bit more. They may go back down a little bit more. The problem with just having money and not investing it in other ways is that it could lose purchasing power over time, there is inflation. So often investors, the folks that I work with, and the folks that Tiffany and Kate work with, Tiffany and Kate are trying to move money out of the traditional brokerage accounts into community. Where my work is I feel like I'm I try to be the transition. I feel like as an advisor, where I'm most effective is being able to be a person that can help transition portfolio's move, they start very extractive, very traditional, and I can start helping them move into much more values alignment and in a less extractive way. So brokerage accounts are things that, the Charles Schwabs of the world, Fidelity, all those, Vanguard, all those places, they pay dividends, they pay interest, and depending on the portfolio that you build, you may be holding things that you don't like, and we're going to talk about that. How much time do we have? I just wanted to time check us. Okay, very good. We're moving. We're moving on. So before I go, a brokerage account, for instance, if somebody is investing for retirement that is 20 years away, and they want to build a portfolio that is diversified, common rates of return can really vary. It really just depends on the investments that you choose to hold. But over a 10 years period of time, if you're investing something with, say, moderate risk, we're looking at 7%, 8%, sometimes 9% rates of return. But it really is so varied depending upon the type of portfolio that you choose to put together for yourself. Okay. You want to talk about direct placements some more? So we talk about direct placements. Let's give some examples. So we talked about retirement accounts. Those are 401ks, 403bs, the pension plans, the IRAs of the world. Not to be missed, there are some tax benefits to those accounts. There are some penalties for early withdrawals and things like that. They put those in place for a reason, to try to make it less likely that you will pull from them and have money for retirement. But the direct placements are the exciting areas of investment. This is where deeply community loan funds, a lot of the folks that are in this room Like that's the area where it's more dynamic. It is less traditional. It will be much more aligned with you, like Boston Ujima. Like that's where, that's kind of like an example of a more of a direct placement fund.
I could say I'll talk about some more examples a little bit later, but one of the reasons why I think we call it direct placements is because with all of these more traditional accounts, like a brokerage account, you just kind of like plop in little like a ticker symbol, and then you're like, I buy this and I buy that, and that's all on the exchange. And with these direct placements, it's like very manual. So like what we're doing is just like literally just like plain office, like writing down like how much money and at what return, and then you send it to the place and they send it back, and then you have to like create a code. And so I always thought, when I was at this other firm, that maybe the reason that people didn't do it is because it was like a little time consuming, which I was like, what a sad thing, that because you actually have to like give a little bit of effort, that's like the big hurdle. But it's happening more and more now. So.
And I think it's also like, it's just not, there's not as much information. It does require you to be like in relationship with community, to like know, then you kind of build your knowledge and you start getting, meeting folks, and you start building more of an awareness. Whereas it's like you can just plop into like a Charles Schwab and like look up a ticker symbol, and like the portfolio holdings are there. So it does require a little bit more work.
Yeah.
To do. So when I am working with my clients to build a portfolio, I don't have a slide for this yet, but it is possible to look at, like, in terms of diversification, building up, like, and thinking things in like percentages. So as percentages of a whole. I'll go back to that in a second. But this is just an example of compound interest. So if you want to save $100,000 in 10 years, and you make an investment, say like in your IRA, and you put $6,000 in, and you think that you can earn an annual interest rate of about 5%, is that going to grow by itself in 10 years? That's the dark blue line. If that's all you put, if 6,000 is what you put in, it's going to be like a little bit over $6,000 in 10 years. You have to continue to put almost an additional $7,000 a year in order to grow it to 100,000 in 10 years. That's just one example. Another example, say you want to have $500,000 in 20 years. Because in 20 years, you're gonna live another 30 years, and you may not be working, and that $500,000 is gonna have to last you another 30 years. Well, it's possible. You have $15,000 to invest. You can start there, and the way that you're gonna invest, the portfolio that you built, you think you can earn on average a 7% rate of return every year, give or take. It's not going to happen every year. There's going to be years of ups and downs. That when it comes to investing, across the board, whether you are in a traditional publicly traded fund portfolio, or a portfolio made up of 100% community-driven investments, it is possible that your money will not grow positively every year, okay? But the longer you're in it, the more likely you will be successful, the more likely you will have a positive rate of return. And in this example, you would still have to invest another $11,000 a year in order to reach that goal. So if you break that up, though, in a month, on a kind of a more monthly basis, like $11,000 seems like really shocking. But like if you divide it by 12 months, what is that? My calculator, Thank you. It's almost $1,000 a month. Yes. There you go.
Thank you.
You're good at math. You're very good. So that feels a little bit, break that up then by 2 paychecks. Like, ooh, okay, that seems like a little bit more, that could be a little bit more feasible. So those are just a couple examples of, things to figure out. And when I talk about automating, like that's when you want to drill down and then set up a way for yourself to like stay accountable. But the first is, number one, you're always wanting to be thinking about like the goal. Like that's where the North Star is, your goal. What is your goal? Like put some numbers around it. Like have an idea and, what do you, like talking to you, like what do you think about how do you think about your retirement? It's such a big, retirement is such a big, scary thing. But what I will say is when I look at especially my older clients, I have a few older clients who are up in their 70s, close into their 80s. I have one dear who's a Black woman. She worked her whole career as a nurse. She has raised 4 kids. She didn't start off wealthy at all, but where she is at in life is she's comfortable. She's not uber duper wealthy, but she, in around her mid 30s to her 40s, she lucked out, found a financial advisor who then I basically took her on as a client, acquired her from basically as a client. But that financial advisor created a plan for her that she stuck to for over 20 years. And now where she's at is she's in a comfortable place. So this is a really long-term, saving for retirement, saving and building your wealth. It's a very long-term commitment. You are not going to see the benefits of it in 1 year and 2 years and 5 years. It really takes a long time. But if you trust and believe in yourself that like you deserve to like have, that kind of financial independence, you can be creative and find the ways to be able to do that for yourself.
Let's do, I think, the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
Okay.
well,
Should I talk about it? Do you want to?
you could talk about that one. I thought it was the alternate. Yeah, please talk about that one.
Okay, all right. So when it comes to socially responsible investing or socially conscious investing, whatever you want to call it, there's a few levers that you can look at. There's a few different ways of doing that. And so I tried to break it down on this slide here. One is just like divestment. Like, let's move out of the industries. Let's not invest in the things that are totally contradictory to our values. I do not want to be invested in private prisons, for instance. I do not want to be invested in fossil fuels. I do, there's a number of things I don't want to be invested in. But like, that's just an example of divestment. And you have to actually like build awareness about that to know whether or not you are being invested in those things. That's kind of the negative screening. The positive screening is then, okay, well, like, then what do I want to be invested in? I want to be invested in Black entrepreneurs. I want to be invested in women-owned businesses. I want to be invested in green and renewable energy, things like that. So that's like the opposite of that. The other kind of tenets are community investing we kind of talked about already, but there's another lever that our industry uses to try to shift and move and challenge and shift, capitalism, and that's around shareholder advocacy, and we can have a whole long debate about shareholder advocacy, but that shareholder advocacy is basically like a fund or fund manager tries to work within capitalism, and pressure companies, publicly traded, to, do better, to try to make positive social or environmental changes in the world.
Oh, yeah.
You want to talk about?
Yeah, I could talk about this one. So when we're working with our clients, and also we have this like learning program that Kate and I do called the Chordata cohort, and one of the first things we do is like, you need to decode your brokerage statement. You need to know what you own, because I feel like what happens a lot of times in these brokerage accounts is that somebody is selecting things on your behalf, and you have like literally no idea what is happening in there. And the only way that you can actually do any kind of like accountability measures like shareholder advocacy or anything like that is if you actually know the corporations that are in your portfolio. So the first place that you can go to understand what is in your portfolio is using like Morningstar, or I used Yahoo Finance, but everybody, whenever I say it, they're like eye roll, like, because it's so 1990s. But like, whatever, that was the way that I learned how to do it. And so then you can use resources like As You Sow, where you can then put what are some of those like ticker symbols or corporations there, and they have like a rating system where you can learn more about how that's perceived in like the larger market. And then Natural Investments, they have this thing called the heart rating for how they have determined how to rate different mutual funds and whatnot using this rating system that they came up with like a couple decades ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Can I switch it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh wait, oops, we missed. This is my slide.
Can I say one more? Can I say one more thing about this?
Oh
one?
yeah.
So if you have 401k or perhaps in your IRA or just in your regular brokerage account, like, so your ticker symbol, usually like 3 letters or 5 letters, find what that is, look it up, and these resources like Morningstar and As You Sow's like Invest Your Values tool, like yes, it will definitely break down what are you owning, and how do you feel about that. 401ks are it's hard. One of the things that As You Sow has is if you're at big company or just in general, like these target date funds that a lot of our 401ks or 403bs, things like that, are invested in. Within those target date funds, which tend to own like a number of different mutual funds or ETFs underneath the target date fund umbrella, you'll build awareness around it. If you don't have any other options within your 401k plan, like look for the ones that have kind of an ESG screening. If you can't move those funds yet, talk to your plan administrator, talk to your company about like starting to incorporate them. There was a ruling that just happened that allows for retirement plans to consider ESG screening. There was a big debate happening about that, but they have judges have struck that down, and plan administrators are able to consider environmental, social, and governance issues with the investment options in their retirement plans.
Does anyone know what time it is? Okay, I'm gonna try and get through this real quick. All right, so this is how Chordata works basically in what we invest in. So we invest in community-controlled funds like Ujima. And we invest in national infrastructure like Seed Commons that has these different hubs that are a part of Seed Commons, and they share the technical, like the technical software for underwriting nationally. We invest in Black entrepreneurs to grow community-based businesses like Something Better Foods, which Something Better Foods was a runway entrepreneur. Now we're co-investing with Real People's Fund to invest in Chef Chu. Which is like a real learning curve for us at Chordata. Like we recently, just in the past like year and a half, started investing in individual companies, and it is a real learning curve. And then investing in Black-led community real estate projects like East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative. And they're based in the East Bay, and they fight gentrification through taking properties off the speculative market and putting it into the hands of community. Love it. Something that's tricky though, and I'm gonna like race through this, and then like we'll have 10 minutes for question and answer. But like, a lot of the things that we invest in on behalf of our clients aren't available to like your everyday person. And so while I could be like, yeah, like I love the business that me and Kate created, it's something that's like actually not available to like for me, like all of us to like invest in a lot of these different things. So because they're characterized as like higher risk investments. And so what am I saying here? Like that basically it's like really nice to have these like beautiful ideals that like we embody in our business. And for me as like individual Tiffany Brown who's thinking about my retirement, they're not products that I can actually easily invest in. And that as a Black woman who's moving from working middle class to trying to create like a nest egg and retirement foundation for myself, I'm actually faced with a lot of contradictions. And these contradictions like are all over the place in traditional investing, which is like why I ran screaming from it. But what I love about what's possible in this workshop is to understand like what are all of the old paradigm tools that we can use, but let's use them consciously. And that's something that's been really hard for me to do. So I'm going to say in the very like personal narrative, how does Tiffany think about retirement? Well, in my individual narrative that I started out with, okay, I had like my first job, and when I was 15, 16, arranging for the loans of stocks and bonds with my mom. It was a really wild thing. That was my first job. I had $1,000 SEP IRA, a custodial account that was started for me. I didn't pay attention to that until I was like in my 30s working at this socially responsible investment firm. And then I was like, that's funny. It hasn't grown at all because nobody invested it for me. And because I didn't have like the financial expertise to know that that's something that you actually need to do. The next retirement account that I got at Resource Generation, okay, cool, yeah, they contributed some, I contributed some, whoop, yes. Okay, that one also didn't grow. And like, so it was just like the same $2,500 for like 10 years or something. I was like, whoopsie dipsy, like, you know what? They don't tell you this. And then when I was working at Resource Generation and like learning about regenerative finance, and I was like, oh my God, it sounds so amazing to invest outside the stock market. I want to do that too. What do I do? And like everyone's like, that's cute. Who knows? Like, because there's not really anything for people that are in our class bracket. But I was like, okay, someone said Portfolio 21. Got it. So I invested in Portfolio 21, which really is just a screened fund. So it's just like a collection of all of these different corporations kind of clustered into one screened whatever. And yeah, so that was like my first moment of like, I'm going to actively try to invest. And then when I was at this socially responsible investment firm, they started a retirement account for me. I was like, somebody help, please. Somebody did help. We came up with the allocation. Okay, cool. I feel like there's this way that I could be like, I created with Kate this like beautiful radical investment firm. Like, let me prove a point and like sell off my retirement account. But that'd be stupid. I'm a Black woman in America. Like, I'm not trying to be too proud to like have a thing. And at the same time, I want to be real about all these contradictions in finance. So what I guess I want to say to you today is I'm really focused on paying off my mortgage. And this was actually the very first time that I made a contribution to my SEP account because I'm self-employed. And that just felt like that was worth it for me. And I think what I will ultimately do, because there's not a lot of platforms for doing this direct placement investing in our own retirement accounts, is probably look at something more like what are muni bonds that are based in California, which is where I live, because that's like the closest thing that like feels like it resonates with my values. But as noted, there's a lot of like, if you don't want to invest in the stock market, a lot of like money market accounts right now that are like getting like 5%. Okay, questions?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well.
I'm Lumber Dan, so we are the only Black-owned lumber yard in the nation.
Ooh, what?
Yes.
So we bought the lumber yard to try to go rebuild our neighborhood, supply the rebuilding process. But there's this mythical, elusive creature called an investment or an impact investor. And you hear a lot about them. I hear a lot about the new generation of wealth that's coming up, and I think a lot of people that we've run into, not only at the conference but just in general, have been trying to tap into this investor class, but we don't understand the is it a real thing, or is it talk? Like, is it, how do you move beyond the $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 investments to the critical mass investments that actually get things to be moving beyond that can actually benefit our communities, to move them beyond where they're at? Because right now it's just they're single site, small scale, small investments in a single business that is not really about they could be about growth, but it's not catalytic enough, or it's not enough critical mass to get it to where it needs to be. So what is the mindset of that community? And has that been activated in your experience? Because it seems like it's really good for show, but we haven't seen the investment come to where it needs to be at unless you're traditional white male.
Well, yeah, it was like pretty scary getting into the like realm of like impact investors, because I feel like there's one way that it kind of seemed like it was a lot of talk, but that it was but it didn't really like look any different than traditional, just kind of like venture vulture, like whatever. And to answer your question in terms of resources, being that I didn't start as like an entrepreneur that like needed investment capital in my own thing, I'm speaking in a very different way of like kind of what I could sort of see as a potential through line, and you might be able to speak to this differently. But that if I was you, what I would be looking at is like, okay, what are the different like loan funds that have values that resonate with me and that can offer some level of technical assistance? Because as like an impact investor, what we look for when we're vetting either, mostly now like individual companies that we invest in, and it's hardly any because it's like really labor intensive, and we don't have like the direct training in that. But like when we see an entrepreneur that's partnered with a technical assistance arm, where somebody's really like coaching, guiding all of this, and then they're getting like different deposits of capital as they grow, and we can like witness the track record as they're growing, like that is like an investment that we would be interested in then like investigating ourselves, but it would like take time. But yeah, so I'd be curious if there are like cool values aligned loan funds, or if you want to look at seed commons, and a lot of the places that like, well, yeah, Seed Commons, Cooperative Fund in the Northeast, like a lot of these places I feel like you could reach out to, or like I would be happy to try and make some introductions to. Yeah.
Good.
See some more questions over here.
Thank you. So I'm from Memphis, and so this is great information, but I'm curious to know where your footprint is, and I'm glad you mentioned like the technical support piece, because most of the time, we're not quite ready for this, but I'm curious to know if you guys, where the footprint occurs, particularly around the community-based projects and the real estate-based projects.
The footprint as far as like where we're seeing, where we're investing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's in different pockets of the country. She mentioned East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative, that's based in Oakland in the Bay Area. Seed Commons is kind of it's rooted in New York, but they work with different cooperative funds that are across the country. What are some of there's Local Code, which is a new kind of Black stewarded land trust project, opportunity zone in Kansas City, Missouri. What else?
We're starting to do research on one called Invest Appalachia, which might be like more in your region. And yeah, but I feel like it's a lot on the coast, and then some stuff that's in the South. Hope Credit Union.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely needs to be like more investment. Like there's folks here that
Runway's
are
doing work in the
trying
South.
to build it. That's right.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Yeah.
trying to build it. Yes. Is there one time for any more questions? Or we over?
So actually, we're gonna have to wrap up questions.
Okay.
Sorry, y'all. I have to, in addition to being the MC, I have to be like the timekeeper, which means telling people no. But we are gonna wrap this up with a final word, maybe a question from our other wonderful MC, and I'm gonna hand it over to you.
All right, so you both are at Natural Investments, and I'm wondering, what does the field look like right now? You ended up at a firm with your own shingles. I hear people asking all of the time for, wealth advisors and managers who can help them place capital in values-aligned ways. Do you see growth in the field right now, or is it kind of like, what do you think?
No, there's definitely growth in the field. I think like where my practice is at, when I started a few years ago, like I've like steadily raised my minimum. So like I started at a certain place, low to like none. Now I won't take on a client that's less than $1 million, but it wasn't always that way. Where I think that there's a lot of opportunity is for like, it's hard for me to refer people. So there is lots of opportunity for newer advisors to come up in the field if that's something that they're interested in. We all, we as a firm, Natural Investments, like they're kind of like slowly making, they've made a commitment to only hiring people of color advisors, which is a pretty strong commitment and nice, to see in our industry, because they just really want to walk the walk and believe that they need to be creating more, they need to be prioritizing creating more opportunities for other people. Is there anything else you want to say towards that?
I don't know. Finance is a bleak field, folks. Like,
it is.
I mean, there's some like good
Yeah.
people, and like I think the way that we have to hold it is like it was built for a reason, like to be this like really opaque that you can't crack it, and so like I don't know. I just handle everything with like a healthy level of like discernment. Yeah.
Can I say one more thing? What I will say is like, okay, so we may not have like all the like our own personal capital to be able to like work with advisors, but like we everybody in this room has power and influence in some way. Like perhaps you can join the investment committee of your organization. Like there are places where you can start inserting your influence and power. That may just not be like involving your own personal assets. That's a great place to like start trying to like be able to like help influence this, influence the type of investing that you want to see in the world.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Give them a round of applause. Thank you. We are moving, and we have to move expeditiously to our next session. So wherever you see it on your app or right outside on the signage, find your